The world thinks it knows Yemen, a name tied to headlines of war, of hunger, of sorrow. But what if that's only half the story? What if beyond the noise, there's another Yemen? One not written in breaking news, but carved in stone, whispered in prayer, and blooming in places no map dares to name. A land where cities rise from clay, where mountains hide stories older than scripture. This is not the Yemen you've heard of. Sacred, surreal, and still burning with memory. There are places so strange, so untouched, they don't feel like Earth anymore. This is one of them. Just 155 miles off Yemen's southern coast, cradled by the Arabian Sea, lies Socotra, an island so surreal it belongs more to myth than to geography. How did such a world come to be? Centuries of isolation turned Socotra into a biological time capsule. More than 1/3 of its plant life exists nowhere else on the planet. The most famous? The dragon's blood tree. Its name is ancient, Dracaena cinnabari, but most simply call it the dragon's blood tree. Rising like an umbrella torn from a forgotten sky. It spreads its limbs wide over the windswept Dixum Plateau, where clouds skim low and silence clings to stone. The people of Socotra say these trees once grew from the blood of a wounded dragon, fallen in a battle older than history itself. Each cut of the bark still weeps red, a thick, sacred resin used for centuries to heal wounds, paint holy symbols, and summon protection from desert spirits. But the tree's shape is no accident of myth. In this highland of limestone and mist, water is rare, and the dragon's blood has learned to drink from the air itself. Its wide crown spreads out to catch the fog, turning tiny drops of mist into the water it needs to survive. Some say these trees have stood for centuries, and when the wind rustles their crowns, the old ones whisper. It's the sound of something ancient still alive. But Socotra isn't only made of stone and silence. On the far western coast lies Shoab Beach, a stretch of white sand so pure it looks untouched by time. No road leads there, only the sea, and sometimes as if summoned by something older than memory. Dolphins swim beside the boat, Locals say it's a good omen. When dolphins appear, the sea will be generous, the nets will be full, and the wind will stay kind. Fishermen still set out at dawn, their nets repaired by hand, their songs old as the tide. Before each journey, they light fires on the beach, not for warmth, but for blessing. Here, the sea isn't just a place to fish, it's a living spirit. Marib. If Socotra is where nature remembers, then marib is where memory turns to stone. In the heart of Yemen's desert, where the heat shimmers like memory and the wind carries forgotten hymns, lie the remains of a temple once buried for over 2,000 years. Mahram Bilqis, the temple of the moon god and the sacred heart of the ancient kingdom of Saba. Today, archaeologists know it as the Baran Temple, a name grounded in science, yet still echoing with myth. Rising from the dust are 7 massive pillars, weathered but defiant, as if still holding up the weight of a story too grand to collapse. The locals call it the Temple of the Queen of Sheba, the legendary ruler who, according to scripture and folklore, crossed vast lands to meet King Solomon. Legend or truth, her memory lingers in these stones, quiet but unshakable. According to tradition, this was not just a temple, it was a gateway between the mortal and the divine. A place where incense burned day and night, and where priests watched the moon's cycle like a divine clock. Inscriptions in the ancient Sabian script still trace the walls, bearing witness to a civilization built not on war, but on the flow of frankincense and myrrh across continents. For over 2,000 years, the sands covered this temple, hiding its secrets from the world. It wasn't until the last century that excavations began to reveal its grandeur. With each column unearthed, another piece of the story returned. And still, the wind moves through the ruins like a voice too ancient to name. She may be a legend, the moon god, long forgotten. But these stones, they still remember. Stand among the pillars at dusk and feel the desert unfasten the seams of time. The air tastes faintly of salt and resin, as if the caravans of old had only just passed. Shadows stretch across the carved stones like ghostly prayers, and the silence hums with an energy older than scripture. Here, myth and history are inseparable. Every grain of sand a fragment of a kingdom that once studied the stars to calculate time and trade with far-flung lands of the world. But memory doesn't always need stone to survive. Sometimes it holds on through mud and hands, passed down not in scripture, but in the way walls are rebuilt and prayers are whispered before the rains. And before us is Haad al-Jazil, a village that clings to the rocks as if clinging to life itself. Clinging to a giant monolith in the heart of Wadi Dawan, the village of Haad al-Jazil looks less like something built and more like something grown from the earth itself. From afar, it appears as a cluster of sand-colored homes, stacked like fossilized coral, perched atop a massive rock rising out of the valley floor. There are no grand gates, no visible roads, just silence, cliffs, and the slow rhythm of survival. Made entirely of mud brick and stone, the village has stood here for centuries, exposed to flash floods, time, and the slow grind of isolation. Built high to avoid the floods that once went through the valley, and to watch for invaders long before they arrived. Here, walls are shields. Straw and memory are kneaded into the mud, shaped by hand year after year. Every crack holds a story, every roof a prayer for another dry season. Even the smallest details breathe survival. Wooden beams cut from rare palms, doors carved with simple geometric patterns. And narrow windows designed not for spectacle, but for shade and defense. When dusk falls, the entire settlement glows the color of baked clay. A soft ember against the darkening cliffs, and the valley echoes with the call to prayer that drifts upward like a thread between earth and sky. They say the valley forgets many things, but not the people who dared to live above it. Here, life persists not through monuments, but through the quiet repetition of daily acts, mixing mud, mending walls, and trusting the rock beneath their feet to hold for one more generation. In that rhythm of survival lies a truth more lasting than stone resilience, not etched in monuments, but lived quietly day after day in a land the world has nearly forgotten. In a valley of dust and stone, where most towns rise for trade or war, one town rises for prayer. From above, Tarim glows like a vision, a small desert town, almost entirely white, wrapped in silence and sun. It's not the white walls that make Tarim sacred. It's how many of them whisper the same name for God. Over 360 mosques, for a town barely stretching the length of a morning walk. Why so many? Some believe the town was formed by people who came here not to conquer. They were scholars, mystics, and pilgrims who followed the scent of incense and stayed for the Quran. For centuries, Tarim has been the heart of Islamic scholarship in Yemen, the place where sons of desert tribes became imams and fathers sent their children not to the market, but to the mosque. Especially the Al-Hajar minaret, rising over 160 feet into the dry desert sky, built entirely from sun-baked mud brick. No steel, no cement, only clay, sunlight, and faith. Inside, the rhythm of recitation still echoes soft, steady, eternal. But Tarim is more than its mosques. It is a city where every street corner holds a library, where manuscripts hundreds of years old are still read by candlelight, and where family lineages trace back to the Prophet's companions. The streets outside are quiet, almost weightless. At dusk, the call to prayer rises, but what follows is softer. The sound of remembrance woven into silence. Even the markets move with restraint. Spices, dates, and simple goods laid out without noise or chaos. As if business itself bows to the rhythm of devotion. Travelers say Tarim feels less like a town and more like a sanctuary without walls, a place where faith bleeds into daily life with no boundary between the sacred and the ordinary. And yet, for all its piety, Tarim is not frozen in the past. Its scholars travel across the Islamic world, carrying Yemen's spiritual legacy to Cairo, Damascus, Jakarta, even as the town itself remains anchored in the valley, unchanged in essence for centuries. Here, under the desert sun, time feels slower, stretched by prayer and memory. Not all cities are made to conquer space. Tarim is one of those rare places built to descend inward, into memory, into prayer, into the eternal hush of faith. Why is it just sun-dried mud, stacked 9 stories high? In the middle of the desert, Shibam stands as if the sand itself had learned how to build. Often called the Manhattan of the desert, that name only describes its height, not the stories and centuries within. Rising straight from the desert floor, Shibam is not carved into mountains or cradled by cliffs. Tower after tower of sun-dried mud, climbing 7 to 9 stories high, shoulder to shoulder like a forest of clay. For more than 5 centuries, these towers have endured through time, through floods, through war, not held together by stone, but by hands, memory, and the quiet duty of care. In Shibam, keeping the building standing means keeping the past alive. Staircases coil tightly between mud walls, tracing vertical paths like veins through clay. Rooms are stacked, not spread, narrow, shaded, and cool, designed to survive heat with no electricity. Each building leans just slightly toward the next, sharing shadow, forming a dense geometry, like a desert fortress made of breath and balance. It was designed to last, and after 500 years, the walls have not lost any of their value. From the rooftops, the Hadramaut Valley opens wide across the desert, once a vital corridor for frankincense and myrrh caravans that linked Arabia to the Mediterranean. At sunrise, the towers catch the light in soft gold. At dusk, they darken to the color of the desert floor, blending back into the earth that birthed them. Here, every step reveals a living architecture, fragile in earth, unyielding in spirit. a city preserved by the steady hands of those who refuse to let it vanish. To outsiders, it may look fragile, yet for centuries this fragile city has stood against floods and storms that erased other towns. Its survival is a quiet defiance, proof that mud, when shaped by faith and devotion, can outlast empires. What Shibam built to last, Seiyun built to rule. Same land, same hands, but a different dream, not survival, but splendor. A palace not carved in marble, but pressed from mud, painted white, and made to rule. This is Seiyun Palace, the largest structure in Hadramaut. Its towers rise like frozen waves over the town, their facades bright against the dull gold of the desert. Built entirely from sun-dried mud bricks, washed in white lime, it was once the political and administrative heart of the Kathiri Sultanate, a kingdom now gone, but never quite erased. From a distance, it looks almost unreal, just form bold, vertical, monumental. Inside, light glides along arched corridors and painted ceilings, some still marked with floral motifs and Quranic calligraphy. Today, the palace serves as a museum, holding the region's memory in glass and silence. But in its walls, can still feel the rhythm of footsteps once hurried by politics, rituals, and royal days long vanished. In the central hall, shadows stretch long across tiled floors, as if reluctant to leave. It doesn't breathe like something alive. It endures like something sacred. Not just a palace, but a memory of power, still held in walls that refuse to forget. Yet Seiyun Palace is more than its size and splendor. Within its rooms lie traces of royal decrees once signed in haste, of banquets held under lantern light, of decisions that shaped the valleys beyond its walls. Every balcony once looked down on processions. Every staircase once bore the weight of rulers who turned mud into majesty. Even now, step into its courtyards and feel a silence heavy with memory. The museum displays weapons, jewelry, manuscripts, fragments of a kingdom preserved not in legend, but in fragile objects of everyday rule. The whitewashed walls, though weathered by sun and sand, still gleam faintly, as if unwilling to surrender their dignity. Seiyun Palace stands not just as a monument, but as testimony that even kingdoms built from earth and lime can project power strong enough to echo across centuries. The white walls of Seiyun fade behind you, their quiet grandeur dissolving into the amber haze of the Haraz mountains, and ahead, the land rises in jagged folds of stone. Here, where the echoes of power have faded, survival tells a sharper story. Cliffs of raw rock and homes that feel grown, not built, rising from the mountain's bone. High in this rugged range, Al-Hajar clings to a cliff like a vision carved from stone, its houses gripping the mountainside as if gravity had been deceived. From afar, the village seems to sprout from the rock, defying storms, earthquakes, and centuries of erosion. How, hundreds of years ago, did people fasten entire homes to sheer rock walls without modern tools? The answer is a marriage of ingenuity and environment. Each house was built from hand-cut stone, stacked without mortar, yet locked so precisely that the walls have endured for over 3 centuries. Natural ledges became foundations, creating interlocking structures that absorb tremors and resist landslides. Thick stone keeps interiors cool in the burning summer and warm through icy nights, while narrow alleys channel mountain breezes like natural ventilation. Every block was hauled up steep, twisting trails by human strength alone, a feat of endurance that mirrors the resolve of families who chose to live at such heights. From within, the village feels like a labyrinth, stairways climbing between terraces, doorways carved directly into rock, and rooftops that double as paths to the next house. Life unfolds vertically, stitched tightly to the stone. Generations here have measured time not by calendars but by seasons of rain and harvest, their lives paced by the mountain itself. Stronger than modern concrete, Al-Hajar's vernacular architecture stands as proof that beauty and permanence can rise from the harshest landscape when human skill and nature meet. And as dusk settles, the village glows in muted amber, merging with the cliffs until it seems less a place made by people, and more a vision the mountain itself chose to keep. The trail winds deeper into the Haraz Mountains, where ridges rise like blades from the earth. And the air grows thinner, laced with the scent of stone and sky. Locals call this realm Jabal Haraz, the stairway to heaven, a name earned not by myth, but by the sight of entire mountainsides carved into green, ascending steps. From afar, the terraces rise in endless tiers, each one cut by hand to catch the rare rains and cradle fields of grain and khat. Villages perch along the ridgelines, their stone houses linked by narrow paths that cling to the mountain's skin, winding like veins of life between the clouds. Here, farming is an act of precision and defiance. Generations have shaped these terraces from sheer rock, stacking walls of dry stone to hold fragile soil, coaxing food from land that should offer none. Water, coaxed from passing mists and brief mountain storms, is hauled upward by hand and tucked into secret cisterns. At dawn, the mountains breathe in silver light, and the terraces awaken in a hush, broken only by the slow trickle of hidden streams. In this suspended world, stone walls hold not just soil, but centuries of patience, each terrace a quiet pact between earth and sky. From above, the terraces ripple across the slopes like green waves frozen mid-motion, each curve a signature of human persistence etched into the mountain. Life here is measured in steps, climbing from one terrace to the next. Even the smallest details reflect adaptation. Homes built with thick stone walls to anchor against winds, roofs that double as drying racks for harvest, cisterns carved deep into rock to guard precious rainwater. Jabal Haraz feels less like farmland than a dream of balance, where gravity seems to fluctuate and the mountains flow seamlessly into the endless sky. The road drops from the highlands into a plain of heat and silence, where the ruins of Zabid emerge like a faded script on the earth. Once a luminous center of Islamic learning, the city now stands half-erased, its ancient walls crumbling beneath the weight of salt winds and neglect. Centuries ago, Zabid was home to more than 80 madrasas, where theology, science, and art were debated by oil lamplight. Its scholars shaped thought across the Arabian Peninsula, and its streets once pulsed with the cadence of Quranic recitation and the shuffle of students' sandals. Today, the city remains a UNESCO World Heritage Site, yet it is also listed as endangered, its labyrinth of alleys slowly surrendering to time. Fragments of carved plaster cling to leaning doorframes, and narrow stone paths lead past walls where calligraphy has blurred into dust. In hidden courtyards, a few schools still teach the Quran beneath roofs of palm fronds, their soft chants rising against the quiet decay. In those moments, it feels as if time folds in on itself, the present dissolving into the past. When lamps once flickered against the same plaster walls, and voices carried through these very alleys. Zabid feels less deserted than quietly suspended, as if the wisdom it once guarded still murmurs within the fractured walls, waiting for a mind willing to listen. The old market square, now nearly empty, still bears traces of trade, faded niches in the walls where spices were stored, shadows of awnings that once sheltered scholars and merchants. The silence here is not emptiness, but a palimpsest of centuries. Here, the enduring truth remains. Knowledge is never truly lost. It fades only when those entrusted with its care let the echoes of memory slip into quiet oblivion. And so, Zabid remained, no longer the vibrant city it once was, but as a fragile manuscript etched in clay, whispering that wisdom is never erased by time, only waiting for those who will read its silence. If in Zabid knowledge can be forgotten, then Nabi Hud reminds us, faith never really disappears. High above the valleys of Hadramaut, where the land lifts into cliffs and the wind never rests, a lone white shrine clings to the slope. Not grand, not loud, but it is always there. This is the Nabi Hud shrine. Here, they say, lies the prophet Hud, the man who warned the people of Ad and whose name lives on in the Quran. The story is old, so old it slips between scripture and sand, but the belief has endured. Every year, pilgrims come here, walking for miles across barren lands. They climb the slope barefoot. Some leave stones, some weep. It offers no opulence, just a humble tomb kissed by white lime, its dome catching the last light like a fading echo of the sun itself. Just a narrow staircase, a carved stone path, and silence, deep enough to hear your own breath echo. Even when no one is near, it feels full of reverence, of memory, of something older than time. During the annual pilgrimage, families set up simple tents along the valley floor, lighting small fires that glow against the dark cliffs. Prayers drift upward through the night air, mingling with the wind until the whole mountainside hums with devotion. Merchants arrive with water, dates, and incense, their voices carrying across the stone paths, recalling the ancient trade routes that once wove through Hadramaut. At dawn, the first rays of sun strike the white dome, turning it briefly into a beacon visible for miles, a signal not of power, but of persistence. During the annual pilgrimage, families set up simple tents along the valley floor, lighting small fires that glow against the dark cliffs. Prayers drift upward through the night air, mingling with the wind until the whole mountainside hums with devotion. Merchants arrive with water, dates, and incense, their voices carrying across the stone paths, recalling the ancient trade routes that once wove through Hadramaut. At dawn, the first rays of sun strike the white dome, turning it briefly into a beacon visible for miles, a signal not of power, but of persistence. No one knows for certain if the Prophet Haad is buried here. And perhaps that's not the point. In places like this, faith doesn't ask for proof. Just come and feel the magic and sacredness of this place. So perhaps what matters is not what lies beneath the stones, but what still stirs above them. North of Sana'a, where the hills begin to fold and the wind speaks in cooler tones, a single palace rises, not next to a rock, but from within it. This is Dar Al-Hajar, the Rock Palace, a royal summer retreat built in the 18th century, though the rock beneath it has held stories far older. It doesn't sit on a cliff. It is the cliff, a 5-story structure carved into and stacked above a massive pillar of stone, as if the mountain itself had stopped and chosen to become the architecture here. From a distance, it looks like fantasy: arched windows, sculpted balconies, and flowing terraces cascading straight from bare rock. Come closer. This isn't just a monument to beauty, but to brilliance. Form shaped by need and function, carved not for show, but for survival. Built with interlocking stone and natural spring water flowing through its core, Dar al-Hajar was designed to cool the air and calm the soul. A masterpiece of passive design long before the term existed. Inside, the spiral staircases wind upward like veins through the stone. Every level reveals a new rhythm of light and shadow, as if time itself slows down to admire the architecture. Every curve, every corridor, every carved niche speaks of balance between heat and light, between silence and breath. Dar al-Hajar is not just a palace of kings, but also a memory etched into the ground, a reminder that true power does not always have to speak, sometimes just be eternal. Legends say the rock itself was considered sacred long before the palace rose, a place of ancient gatherings and whispered prayers. Building upon it was not an act of dominance, but of continuity, weaving royal presence into something already revered. Even now, the palace's spring still offers water to villagers, proof that Dar al-Hajar was never just a royal retreat, but a lifeline, an oasis, a refuge carved in stone. Seen against the hills, it feels less like architecture and more like a vision, a palace born of rock, enduring as rock, and destined to outlast those who once ruled within it. At over 7,500 feet above sea level, on a plateau where the air grows thin, Sana'a rises like a dream etched in mud, stone, and memory. From above, a city of ochre and lime like gingerbread shaped by centuries. Each rooftop a quiet invocation, each alley a line of living verse. This is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities on Earth, but it does not shout its age. It wears it quietly, intricately in the stained glass windows that scatter morning light. In the delicate patterns of gypsum that lace its facades like embroidery. Its architecture is unique, multi-story homes built from baked brick and volcanic stone, trimmed in white lime, stacked side by side like a library of old souls. Each building seems to lean slightly inward, like elders gathering to share stories beneath a sky the color of burnt copper. Time moves differently here, not forward, but outward in circles, in call to prayer, in cups of spiced quiche passed hand to hand. To walk through Sana'a is not just to move through space, but to pass through layers of memory still warm, still echoing through the walls. Even as modern life encroaches, the old city remains. Because here, history lives in walls, in windows, in whispered greetings across narrow streets. It lives with the past, not as something distant, but as a presence moving quietly through doorways and rising each morning with the prayer. From minarets tall and slender, the call to prayer floats above the rooftops, weaving through colored glass until the city seems to breathe in rhythm with its people. Inside the old houses, carved wooden doors hide cool courtyards where fountains trickle and vines climb toward the light, offering families a private oasis in the heart of the city. Even today, despite wars and storms of change, Sana'a holds its identity intact. It endures not only as a UNESCO treasure, but as a living city, a place where the past does not sleep in ruins, but walks openly beside the present. In a city shaped by mud and memory, one building still listens hardest to the echoes of time. At the still heart of Sana'a, where the streets grow narrow and shadows linger, stands a mosque so old it feels carved into the memory of the city itself. This is the Great Mosque of Sana'a, believed to have been built in the 7th century, during the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad. And though the dates may blur into legend, the stones have been remembered. There is no grandeur here, no gold, no towering minarets to command the sky. Only whitewashed walls, gentle arches, and a hush so complete, even the light steps softly. Sunlight slips through carved wooden latticework, brushing against pages older than empires. Quranic manuscripts inked by hand, stored in a library where parchment curls like dried leaves and script fades into breath. Inside, there is no sense of time passing. Instead, it lingers in the smoothness of the stone floors worn by 1,000 years of prayer, in the still air between recitations, in the way worshippers move not with urgency, but with remembrance. The Great Mosque was not conceived for grandeur. It was conceived to endure, to carry the centuries with quiet strength, to preserve its inherent sacredness. And perhaps that is the quiet power of the mosque. It does not rise up to be a monument. It stands still, as if listening to every prayer whispered in the space of centuries. Here, God is not in grandeur, but in quiet, not pronounced in words, but sensed in the stillness within. Legends tell that fragments of the earliest Qur'ans preserved here were hidden in the walls themselves, only rediscovered by chance centuries later, as if the building chose when to reveal its secrets. Through its arches have passed scholars, mystics, and wanderers, their names long faded, yet their footsteps remain, etched into stone worn smooth by centuries of devotion. The mosque is not just a place to enter, but a place to encounter a silence that moves the soul to reverence. And so, after more than 1,000 years, the Great Mosque of Sana'a remains what it was meant to be, not a symbol of power, but a vessel of prayer, where silence speaks louder than stone. In a city where minarets shape the sky and the call to prayer defines the rhythm of each day, few would expect a trace of ancient Christianity hidden beneath the dust. Al-Khali's Church. A name now mostly lost to time, but once spoken with reverence, like a secret too sacred to forget. Built in the 6th century under Ethiopian rule, it was meant to be the greatest cathedral in all of southern Arabia. Marble was imported from Constantinople. Mosaic tiles shimmered like stars across the ceiling. Some said it rivaled the churches of Byzantium itself. But time has no favorites, and faith, like the empire, shifts. Today, little of Al-Khalis remains above ground, only fragments, a broken arch, a scatter of stone, the echo of Greek crosses faintly etched in plaster. But underground, archaeologists have uncovered the memory. Mosaic floors, floral patterns, colored glass still clinging to shadow, as if beauty, once placed here, refused to leave completely. Travelers of the past wrote of its magnificence, of doors plated with gold and lamps that burned without ceasing, filling the nave with unbroken light. To them, Al-Khalis stood not merely as a church, but as a sign that belief could radiate, even from the heart of the desert. In a land so deeply defined by Islam, the existence of this church feels almost mythical. But it was real, and for a brief moment, it was grand. A house of worship that rose before minarets did, that sang before the adhan first echoed through Sana'a. No services are held here anymore, no incense, no hymns. The silence itself has become its last liturgy, a hymn of absence that still resonates through the broken stones. Even in ruin, the space feels consecrated, not to one faith, but to the idea of the sacred itself. In the silence, what lingers is not belief in conflict, but the echo of something older. That faith has many forms, and sometimes the ruins of one belief do not erase but expand the horizon of memory, reminding us that Sana'a was once a crossroads of devotion, and that the sacred has always been larger than any single voice. From an alien island to the heart of Sana'a, the journey through Yemen is not just about moving on a map, but also about traveling through memories, faith, and the power of survival. If every land is a whisper, Yemen is the chorus of time, low, deep, and never-ending. If you feel that Yemen is both strange and familiar, like a forgotten dream, leave a comment. And if journeys like this one interest you, like the video, share and subscribe to True Horizons so that you can always accompany us on our journeys.